Sean slammed his fist into the alien's face, sending dark green blood spraying across the pristine white command center, as shocked students watched in horror. Sean would make sure these naive alien fucks never underestimated human combat tactics again. Sean wiped the blood from his knuckles onto his pant leg as the alien council members exchanged nervous glances. They had summoned Sean here because they needed him, no matter how much it pained their foolish alien pride to admit it. The warlike Breen had conquered the Alari homeworld, and only the Alari possessed the terraforming tech to let the Breen spread like a plague across the stars. The Council had thrown their supposedly elite units at the Breen fortifications, only to be slaughtered wholesale. In desperation, they turned to Sean. They needed a human's ingenuity and killer instinct. Sean's unorthodox strategies were their only hope of dislodging the Breen. If Sean failed here, it wouldn't just mean the extinction of the Alari. It could mean the beginning of a brutal Breen empire that would threaten humanity's very existence amongst the stars. The balance of power in the entire damn galaxy hinged on this. No pressure. Sean cracked his neck and grunted. I'll take the job, not because I give two shits about your little council, but because if the Breen get a foothold, they'll be humanity's problem soon enough. The Council reluctantly gave Sean command of a small multi-species strike force. He had carte blanche to resolve this mess by any means necessary. As Sean boarded the transport to meet his new squad, he reviewed their dossiers. His eyes narrowed as he read the file on Niran, some young hotshot Breen defector. Niran wanted to teach tactical classes to aliens to undermine his species' warmongering ways. Sean snorted derisively. He'd show that bug what real tactics looked like. This wasn't some classroom exercise. This was all-out war against a ruthless empire with the galaxy in the balance. Sean would drag this ragtag alien team kicking and screaming to victory if he had to. He'd teach them just how fine the line between crazy and genius really was. The Breen were about to learn a brutal lesson in what human unorthodoxy could do. Sean grinned savagely. Class was in session. As Sean's transport docked with the space station, the airlock hissed open. He stepped into the dimly lit corridor, the metal grating clanking under his boots. Following the schematic on his wrist computer, he navigated the twisting passageways until he reached the rendezvous point, a cramped briefing room deep in the station's bowels. Inside, 4 aliens awaited him. Niran, the Breen defector, stood ramrod straight, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Zara, the Alari tech specialist, was hunched over a console, her long, delicate fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Grok, a massive Kralthak, leaned against the wall, his bulging muscles straining against his combat armor. Ixis, the Vespid pilot, flitted nervously on gossamer wings, her compound eyes darting around the room. Sean strode to the front of the room and slapped his hand down on the table, jolting them to attention. Listen up, I'm only going to say this once. We're going to infiltrate the Alari capital using a captured Breen shuttle. Niran, you're going to get us through their security. Zara, you'll hack the defense grid. Grok, you're our muscle. Ixis, you're our getaway pilot. Any questions? Niran raised a spindly arm. With all due respect, sir, a frontal assault is exactly what the Breen will be expecting. Their defenses will be... Sean cut him off with a sharp gesture. We're not assaulting anything. We're hiding in plain sight using their own tactics against them. They'll never see us coming. Over the next few days, Sean put the team through a grueling training regimen. He simulated Breen security checkpoints, forcing Niran to talk them through under pressure. He had Zara hack increasingly complex systems against the clock. He pitted Grok against ever-increasing numbers of combat drones, and he made Ixis fly through asteroid fields and dogfight in binary star systems. At first, Niran chafed under Sean's unorthodox methods, but as he watched the team's skills sharpen and coalesce, he began to understand. This human's madness had a method. On the eve of the mission, as the team made their final preparations, Sean's wrist computer pinged with an incoming message. It was encrypted from an unknown sender. Sean's brow furrowed as he read it. There's a traitor on the council. Your mission may be compromised. Sean's mind raced. Could he trust this intel? Or was it a ploy to throw him off balance? He had to make a call. Jaw set, Sean gathered the team in the hangar bay. They boarded the captured Breen shuttle, settling into their stations. As Ixis powered up the engines and Niran transmitted the falsified codes, Sean felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. This wasn't just about liberating the Alari anymore. It was about his team and the dangerous game they were about to play. The stakes had just gotten a whole lot higher. As the shuttle entered the Alari system, Sean's brow furrowed. The encoded message played over and over in his mind. There's a traitor on the council. Your mission may be compromised. Ixis change of plans. Set us down in the Alari Mountains, Sector H7, Sean ordered. The Vespid tilted her head quizzically. But Captain, our target is the capital. Why land in the middle of nowhere? Call it a hunch. If there's a mole on the council, the Breen probably know we're coming. They'll be waiting for us. Sean's gaze hardened. We need a new approach. Niran leaned forward. The Breen always expect a frontal assault. It's how they think. If we come at them from an unexpected angle... His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Exactly, Sean nodded. We'll infiltrate the capital from the mountains, Niran. You know their tactics. Any ideas? The Breen tapped a claw against his exoskeleton. There's a network of caves that run beneath the range. They lead right up to the city's outskirts. It's treacherous terrain, but it could work. Sean slapped Niran on the shoulder, his exoskeleton cold and hard beneath his palm. I like the way you think, Bug. Ixis, take us in. The shuttle banked hard, diving towards the jagged peaks. As they descended into a narrow valley, Sean caught a glimpse of movement below. He squinted, making out a pack of lupine creatures loping across the rocky ground. The Alari consulted her datapad. Alari drakehounds, apex predators, fast, strong, and vicious. She looked up, her eyes wide. The team scrambled out, weapons drawn. The drakehounds circled, snarling, their fangs glinting in the harsh sunlight. Sean counted at least a dozen, each the size of a large earth wolf. Grok stepped forward, his massive frame towering over the beasts. He roared a challenge, pounding his chest. The lead drakehound, a scarred alpha, leaped at the Kralthak, claws outstretched. Grok caught the creature mid-leap, his huge hands clamping around its throat. The drakehound thrashed and snapped, but Grok held firm. With a savage twist, he snapped its neck and tossed the limp body aside. The pack faltered, whining. Sean saw his chance. He snatched a flare from his belt and ignited it, waving the sputtering red light. The drakehounds flinched, their eyes tracking the flame. Sean hurled the flare into the pack's midst. They scattered, yelping, then regrouped a short distance away. They milled uncertainly, torn between their hunger and their fear of the fire. Into the caves now, Sean barked. As Zara tended to a gash on Grok's arm, Sean watched the pack pacing at the cave entrance. A slow smile spread across his face. I've got an idea, he said. Those mutts are going to be our ticket into the city. Over the next few hours, as they trekked through the winding caves, Sean laid out his plan. They would lure the drakehounds into the city, using them as a distraction to infiltrate the defenses. Niran was skeptical at first, but as Sean explained the details, he began to nod. It's so crazy it just might work, the Breen said. Sean followed the signal to a hidden door set into the cave wall. It opened onto a dusty, long-abandoned outpost. Zara's eyes lit up as she took in the ancient Ilari tech. In the back of the armory, they found a pair of battle suits. Sean grinned as he and Niran climbed into the heavy exoskeletons. So this is going to be good, Sean said, flexing the suit's servo-augmented fingers. Zara interfaced with the outpost's computers, her face bathed in the blue glow of the holographic display. I'm in, she reported. I've got schematics of the city, Breen patrol routes, and, hello, what's this? The location of the defense grid control center. Sean leaned over her shoulder, studying the readout. Nice work, Zara. With this intel and our new friends out there, the Breen won't know what hit 'em. He turned to face his team, a fierce grin spreading across his face. Gear up and get ready. It's time to show these bastards what happens when you mess with the wrong species. As the team checked their weapons and prepared to move out, Sean could feel the adrenaline starting to flow. This was what he lived for, the thrill of the hunt, the rush of the fight. And with this squad at his back, he knew they could take on anything the Breen threw at them. It was time to bring the pain. Sean and Niran moved through the Ilari capital like ghosts, their Ilari battlesuits allowing them to slip past Breen patrols undetected. But as they navigated the once thriving city streets, the true horror of the occupation hit Sean like a gut punch. Ilari citizens, their vibrant skin now dull and their eyes haunted, shuffled in chains between towering labor camps. Breen overseers cracked energy whips, their cruel laughter echoing off the shattered remnants of Ilari architecture. The stench of despair hung thick in the air. Sean's grip tightened on his pulse rifle. He had come here to complete a mission, but this was something else entirely. He keyed his calm. Change of plans. We're splitting up. Niran and I will hit the defense grid control center as planned. Zara, Grok, Ixis, I need you to infiltrate those labor camps. Arm the prisoners. We're going to start a revolution. Niran's head snapped toward him, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Sean, that's not the mission. We need to stay focused. Fuck the mission, Sean snarled. Look around you. We can't just leave them like this. Sean nodded grimly. Give 'em hell. We'll meet you on the other side. As the team split off, Sean and Niran forged ahead, their suit servo motors whirring softly. The control center loomed ahead, a brutalist spire bristling with weaponry. At the entrance, a squad of elite Breen warriors stood guard, their black armor gleaming. Sean and Niran exchanged a glance, then charged. Sean dove left, his suit's enhanced reflexes allowing him to evade a hail of plasma fire. He came up firing, his pulse rounds stitching a line across a Breen's chest. Beside him, Niran was a blur, his suit's cloaking field shimmering as he wove between enemies, his monomolecular blade flashing. They fought like demons, Niran's Breen training and Sean's human ferocity, making them an unstoppable force. In minutes, the guards lay dead, the control center doors gaping open. Across the city, Zara crouched over a labor camp's security terminal, her fingers flying across the holographic keys. With a final keystroke, the prisoners' control collars clicked and fell away. Grok was already moving, charging the nearest guard tower with a roar. Ixis darted among the prisoners, pressing improvised weapons into their hands, her wings a blur. As the Ilari rose up, years of pent-up rage and despair fueling their revolt, the city erupted into chaos. Breen forces, caught off guard, fell back in disarray. In the control center, Sean and Niran stood over the smoking remains of the defense grid, triumph turning to ashes in their mouths as they stared at the readout. A hidden fleet, Niran whispered, waiting to burn the planet. Sean, if they realize the grid is down... Sean's jaw clenched. The defense grid was the only thing that could stop the Breen ships, but using it would mean someone staying behind, manually targeting the fleet. The city shook with the sounds of distant battle, the fate of a world hanging in the balance. Sean looked at Niran, the weight of an impossible choice bearing down on him. Sean's heart thundered in his chest as he met Niran's gaze. The fate of the entire planet hung in the balance. In that moment, Sean knew what he had to do. Niran, you have to lead the team out of here. Get them to safety. Sean gripped Niran's shoulder, his Ilari battlesuit whirring. You have to. Someone needs to stay and target that fleet manually. It's the only way. Niran looked like he wanted to argue, but the respect that had grown between them held his tongue. He nodded curtly. We'll come back for you. I know you will. Now go. As Niran rallied the team and the Ilari rebels, Sean turned to the defense grid console. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he worked to reprogram the targeting systems. Sweat beaded on Sean's brow as he hacked into the fleet's comm network, desperate for any advantage. What he found made his blood run cold. The Breen weren't just here to conquer. They needed the Ilari's terraforming tech to build a new homeworld. Their own planet was dying. An idea sparked in Sean's mind. It was a gamble, but it might be their only chance. He opened a comm channel to the fleet. "Attention, Breen Fleet. This is Sean Taggart of the Galactic Council. I know why you're really here. Your leader has lied to you. You don't need to conquer to survive." Sean took a breath, praying his words would reach them. "The Alari have the technology you need. Work with us and we can find you a new home, one that doesn't require bloodshed." For a long moment there was only silence. Then, miraculously, a handful of Breen ships broke formation, standing down. But the rest of the fleet advanced, undeterred. Their leader's voice crackled over the comm, cold and unyielding. "Fire on my command!" Sean's jaw tightened. He targeted the loyal ships and, with a silent apology, unleashed the full might of the defense grid. The sky above the capital ignited as the Breen ships burst like fiery stars. The bombardment had been stopped, but at a terrible cost. On the ground, Niran and the Resistance fought like demons. With the fleet destroyed and their will broken, the Breen forces surrendered en masse. Cheers of liberation rose from the city as the Alari tasted freedom for the first time in years. Niran led the team back to the control center, desperate to find Sean. They found him slumped over the console, exhausted but alive. Niran clasped his arm, mandibles spread in a Breen smile. "You did it, Sean. You saved them." Sean managed a weary grin. "We did it, all of us." In the days that followed, as the Alari began to rebuild, the Galactic Council arrived to take stock of the situation. They commended Sean and his team, marveling at what they had accomplished. But even as they celebrated, Sean couldn't shake the revelation of the Breen's motives. The galaxy was a complex place, and the line between enemy and ally was often blurred. He knew their work was just beginning. They had won the battle, but to secure a lasting peace they would need to find a solution for the Breen, one that ensured the prosperity of all. It would be a long road ahead, but with his team beside him, Sean knew they could face any challenge. The future of the galaxy was in their hands, and they would not let it fall. Sean leaned back in his chair as the Galactic Council's hologram flickered out. A new mission, a chance to make things right with the Breen. He glanced around at his team, their faces a mix of exhaustion and determination. "All right, listen up," Sean said, rising to his feet. "The Council's given us a new task. We're heading to the Breen homeworld to negotiate a peaceful solution." Niran stepped forward, his exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. "Sean, the Breen won't be easy to convince. They're proud, and their defeat at Alari will sting." Sean nodded. "That's why we're bringing along some Alari diplomats and scientists. We need to show the Breen that we're here to help, not to gloat." The journey to the Breen planet was tense, the weight of their mission hanging heavy in the air. As they entered orbit, Sean stared out at the world below, his breath catching in his throat. The planet was a husk, its surface a mottled brown, its atmosphere choked with haze. Zara's scans revealed a dying ecosystem, dwindling resources, and a population on the brink. The team landed on the outskirts of the Breen capital, a once grand city now crumbling under the weight of desperation. As they disembarked, a squad of Breen warriors approached, their weapons held at the ready. Sean stepped forward, his hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "We come on behalf of the Galactic Council to offer aid and negotiate a new future for your people." Niran stepped up beside Sean, his Breen pheromones wafting on the breeze. "Commander, I am Niran, formerly of the Breen military. I understand your pride, but our people are suffering. We must consider all options." The commander hesitated, then lowered his weapon. "Very well, but don't expect a warm welcome." As they navigated the city streets, Sean was struck by the despair etched on every Breen face. Grok and Ixis broke off from the group, distributing food and medical supplies to the most needy. At the government center, they were met with hostility from the Breen leadership. Accusations of betrayal and demands for retribution flew like daggers, but Niran, drawing on his knowledge of Breen politics, managed to arrange a meeting with a group of elders, those who still remembered a time before the prophecy of doom. In a dimly lit chamber, the elders shared the tale of their world's decline and the prophecy that drove their conquests. Sean listened intently, a plan forming in his mind. "What if," he said, leaning forward, "we could restore your planet? The Alari have advanced terraforming technology. Instead of finding a new world, we could rejuvenate this one." The elders murmured amongst themselves, a flicker of hope in their eyes. Zara and the Alari scientists set to work, analyzing soil samples and atmospheric readings, determining the feasibility of Sean's proposal. But as the negotiations progressed, a shadowy faction within the Breen leadership plotted to sabotage the peace. Led by a ruthless warlord, they saw the talks as a threat to their power. The attack came without warning, plasma bolts scorching the air as the warlord's forces stormed the government center. Sean and his team fought back, side by side with their newfound Breen allies. In the chaos, Sean found himself face to face with the warlord, a hulking brute of a Breen. They clashed in a fierce duel, Sean's human agility against the warlord's raw strength. With a final, desperate lunge, Sean brought the warlord down, his betrayal exposed for all to see. The fighting ceased, the warlord's followers laying down their arms in the face of undeniable truth. With the threat neutralized, the peace talks resumed. Zara presented her findings. The terraforming plan was viable, a chance for a new beginning. The elders, their eyes glinting with cautious optimism, agreed to the proposal. As the team prepared to begin the terraforming process, Sean took a moment to reflect. The path to peace was never easy, but it was always worth fighting for. True victory, he realized, lay not in conquest, but in understanding and cooperation, in finding common ground even with those once considered enemies. The road ahead would be long, but with his team beside him and a newfound sense of purpose, Sean knew they would walk it together, for the future of the Breen and for the future of the galaxy. The terraforming rig hummed to life, its massive drills boring into the planet's crust. Zara and the Alari scientists worked tirelessly, calibrating the equipment and monitoring the progress. The first step was to rejuvenate the soil, infusing it with nutrients and microorganisms to jumpstart the ecosystem. Grok and Ixis, meanwhile, continued their aid efforts among the Breen population. They helped set up temporary shelter and water purification systems, easing the strain on the dwindling resources. Slowly but surely, trust began to grow between the two species. Sean and Niran spent long hours in meetings with the Breen elders, hammering out the details of the terraforming project and the future governance of the planet. It was a delicate balancing act, respecting Breen traditions while introducing necessary reforms. Progress was slow but steady. Weeks turned into months, and the first signs of change began to appear. Patches of green sprouted from the once barren soil, and the haze in the atmosphere started to clear. The Breen watched in awe as their world began to heal. But the warlord's faction, though diminished, had not been entirely eliminated. From the shadows they plotted their revenge, biding their time until the moment was right to strike. That moment came on the day of the Great Planting, a ceremony to mark the progress of the terraforming. Breen from all walks of life gathered in the capital, ready to sow the first seeds of their new world. As Sean stepped up to the podium to deliver a speech, a plasma bolt seared the air inches from his head. Chaos erupted as the warlord's loyalists charged into the crowd, weapons blazing. Sean's team leapt into action, Grok's mighty roar echoing across the plaza as he charged the attackers. Ixis took to the air, her wings a blur as she rained down fire on the enemy. Zara and Niran worked to evacuate the civilians, their weapons hot in their hands. Sean raced through the fray, his eyes locked on the warlord. The Breen renegade stood atop a crumbling monument, a plasma launcher in his grip. With a snarl, he took aim at the terraforming rig, intent on undoing all their hard work in one fell swoop. Sean leapt, his body slamming into the warlords just as he pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt went wide, exploding harmlessly against a distant building. They grappled on the edge of the monument, a deadly dance high above the ground. The warlord was strong, but Sean fought with the strength of conviction. With a final mighty effort he hurled the Breen over the edge. The warlord's scream faded as he vanished into the depths. As the last of the loyalists was subdued, an eerie calm settled over the plaza. Sean, his breath coming in ragged gasps, looked out over the gathered breen. In their eyes, he saw a flicker of something new: hope. The planting ceremony resumed, taking on a new solemnity in the wake of the attack. As the first seeds were placed in the soil, a cheer went up from the crowd. It was a sound of joy, of relief, of a people rediscovering their future. Sean stood with his team, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, and allowed himself a small smile. They had fought hard for this moment, had given everything to make it a reality, and as he watched the breen celebrate, as he felt the first stirrings of a breeze that carried the scent of new life, he knew it had all been worth it. The path ahead was still long, and there would be challenges yet to come. But standing there in that moment of triumph, Sean felt a sense of unity, of purpose, that transcended species and worlds. They had proven that anything was possible when sentient beings worked together. And that, Sean thought, was the greatest victory of all. Not conquest, not domination, but the simple, powerful act of understanding, of finding strength in diversity and hope in the midst of despair. With a nod to his team, Sean stepped forward, ready to embrace whatever the future might bring. They had a planet to rebuild and a galaxy to unite, and they would do it the only way they knew how, together. As the terraforming project progressed, Sean found himself spending more and more time among the breen, learning their ways and their stories. He sat with the elders, listening to tales of their world's once vibrant past, and with the children, who whispered their dreams for a greener future. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the capital, Sean was approached by a young breen named Kale. The boy's exoskeleton was still soft, his mandibles twitching nervously as he looked up at the human. "You're different from the other outsiders," Kale said, his voice a reedy whisper. "You listen, you care." Sean knelt, bringing himself to the boy's level. "I do care, Kyle, about your people and about making sure you have a future." Kale's eyes glinted in the moonlight. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help people like you helped us." Sean felt a lump form in his throat. He placed a hand on Kyle's shoulder, feeling the warmth of life beneath the chitinous shell. "You can be anything you want to be, Kyle. Your future is yours to shape." As Kyle scampered off, Sean remained kneeling, his mind turning over the boy's words. Helping people, making a difference. Wasn't that what he had always wanted? Wasn't that why he had taken on this mission in the first place? He thought of his team, of the bonds they had forged through trial and hardship. Niran, the outcast who had found a new purpose. Zara, the brilliant mind who had made the impossible possible. Grok, the warrior with a heart as big as his fists. Ixis, the flyer who had soared above her own doubts. Together they had accomplished something remarkable. They had brought hope to a dying world, had shown that compassion could be a force as powerful as any weapon. And as Sean stood, dusting off his knees and turning his face to the stars, he knew that their journey was only beginning. There were other worlds out there, other peoples in need of a helping hand, and he and his team would be there, ready to answer the call. Because that was what it meant to be human, Sean realized. To reach out, to connect, to strive for understanding in the face of difference, to find the common threads that bound all sentient life, and to weave them into something stronger. The galaxy was a vast and wondrous place, filled with dangers and opportunities in equal measure. And as Sean strode back towards the terraforming rig, towards the glowing beacon of hope that it represented, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was Sean Taggart, peacemaker, and he had a job to do. As the first Ilari terraforming rigs rumbled to life on the Breen homeworld, boring deep into the planet's crust, Sean watched the holographic readouts with a furrowed brow. The machinery was functioning at peak efficiency, but a flashing warning light indicated a critical shortage of Ethereum, the rare mineral that powered the Ilari's advanced technology. Sean turned to Zara, who was hunched over a console, her fingers flying across the holographic keys. "What's our Ethereum status?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. Zara shook her head, her eyes never leaving the screen. "We're down to less than 10% of our original supply. At this rate, the terraforming process will grind to a halt within a matter of days." Sean slammed his fist against the wall, frustration boiling in his veins. They had come so far, had sacrificed so much to bring hope to the Breen people. He wouldn't let a mineral shortage stand in their way. "There has to be another source," he growled, his mind racing. "Somewhere we haven't looked." Niran, who had been studying a star map, suddenly straightened, his exoskeleton clicking with excitement. "There is," he said, his voice filled with a mix of hope and trepidation. "A remote, uncharted planet, deep in the neutral zone. But Sean, the neutral zone is a lawless region, outside the Galactic Council's jurisdiction. It's filled with pirates, smugglers, and worse." Sean's jaw tightened. He knew the risks, but he also knew that the success of the terraforming project and the future of the Breen depended on securing a steady supply of Ethereum. "Then that's where we're going," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Assemble a strike team. We leave at dawn." As the twin suns of the Breen homeworld rose over the horizon, Sean stood in the hangar bay, watching as his team loaded supplies onto their cloaked ship. Niran and Grok were already aboard, along with a handful of trusted Breen and Ilari soldiers. Sean allowed himself a small smile. Zara knew him well. She knew that he would do whatever it took to see this mission through, no matter the cost. With a final nod to his team, Sean boarded the ship, the airlock hissing shut behind him. As they lifted off, the Breen homeworld falling away beneath them, Sean felt a familiar rush of adrenaline. This was what he lived for, the thrill of the unknown, the chance to make a difference. But as they entered the swirling, multicolored vortex of the neutral zone, Sean couldn't shake the feeling that they were flying into something far more dangerous than they had ever faced before. The journey through the neutral zone was a harrowing one. The cloaked ship wove through fields of debris, the remnants of countless battles between pirates and smugglers. Strange, alien creatures drifted past the viewports, their bioluminescent tendrils casting an eerie glow. Sean stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the navigational readouts. Beside him, Niran piloted the ship with a steady hand, his Breen training evident in his precise, calculated movements. "We're approaching the planet," Niran reported, his voice tight with tension. "Sensors are picking up high levels of Ethereum, but also multiple life signs. We're not alone down there." As the ship entered the planet's atmosphere, Sean got his first glimpse of the surface. It was a harsh, unforgiving landscape, all jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. In the distance, he could see strange, spire-like structures rising from the ground, glinting in the dim light of the planet's distant sun. The ship touched down on a rocky plateau, the landing gear sinking into the loose soil. Sean and his team disembarked, weapons at the ready. The air was thin and cold, biting at their lungs with every breath. As they approached the nearest spire, a flurry of movement caught Sean's eye. From behind the rocks, a group of figures emerged, their bodies covered in crude metallic armor. They carried long, wickedly sharp spears, and their eyes glinted with a fierce, primal intelligence. The leader of the group, a tall, muscular alien with a crest of spikes running down his back, stepped forward, his spear leveled at Sean's chest. Sean raised his hands, his pulse rifle dangling from its strap. "We come in peace," he said, keeping his voice steady. "We seek the mineral you call Ethereum. We need it to save a dying world." The Koth leader's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his spear. "The Ethereum is sacred to us," he snarled. "It is not for outsiders to take." Sean took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the fate of the Breen and the success of their mission hinged on this moment. "Let me show you something," he said, reaching slowly for his belt. The Koth tensed, their spears rising, but Sean merely pulled out a small metallic disc. He tapped a button on its surface, and a holographic image sprang to life, the Ilari's terraforming technology, in all its intricate detail. "This is what we can offer in exchange for the Ethereum," Sean said, his voice filled with conviction. "Technology that can transform your world, make it a paradise. Imagine rivers of pure water, fields of lush vegetation, a sky free of dust storms. All of this can be yours, if you help us." The Koth leader stared at the hologram, his eyes wide with wonder. For a long moment he was silent, the only sound the howling of the wind over the barren rocks. Then slowly, he lowered his spear. "We will consider your offer," he said, his voice grudging. "For now you may stay, but know this, outsider. If you betray us, if you try to take the Ethereum by force, you will face the full wrath of the Koth." Sean nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It was a start, at least, a fragile alliance forged in the heat of desperation. But as he and his team followed the Koth into the depths of the spire, Sean couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were only just beginning. Over the next few days, Sean and his team worked tirelessly to mine the Ethereum, the precious mineral that was the key to the Breen's salvation. The Koth, true to their word, allowed them access to the spires, revealing vast veins of glittering blue-green crystal. Grok, with his immense strength, proved invaluable in the mining process, while Niran and the Alari soldiers used their advanced technology to refine the raw Ethereum into a usable form. Sean oversaw the operation, working closely with the Koth chieftain to ensure that the alliance held strong. But even as the stockpiles of Ethereum grew, Sean couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of his stomach. The neutral zone was a dangerous place, and he knew that their presence on the planet would not go unnoticed for long. His fears were realized on the fourth day, when a series of explosions rocked the mining site. Sean, who had been discussing the finer points of the terraforming technology with the Koth chieftain, raced outside, his pulse rifle at the ready. The sight that greeted him was one of chaos. A group of heavily armed pirates, their ships hovering menacingly overhead, had attacked the site, blasting away at the Koth warriors with high-powered plasma weapons. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. Sean immediately leapt into action, his training taking over. He barked orders to his team, organizing a defense even as he charged towards the nearest pirate, his rifle spitting deadly bolts of energy. Beside him, the Koth chieftain let out a roar of fury, his spear flashing in the dim light. Together they fought their way through the ranks of pirates, their weapons flashing and sparking as they clashed against the enemy's armor. But the pirates were well armed and well trained, and they outnumbered Sean's team and the Koth warriors. Sean saw Niran go down, a plasma bolt searing through his exoskeleton. 2 of the Alari soldiers fell, their bodies riddled with holes. Sean gritted his teeth, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that they couldn't hold out much longer, that they needed a miracle to turn the tide of battle. And then, just when all seemed lost, he heard a familiar sound, the whine of Grok's pulse cannon powering up to full charge. The massive Kralthak had managed to flank the pirates, and now he unleashed a devastating barrage of energy, tearing through their ranks like a hot knife through butter. The pirates, caught off guard by this new threat, faltered, their formation breaking. Sean and the Koth chieftain pressed their advantage, driving the enemy back towards their ships. In the end, the pirates fled, their ships limping away into the swirling vortex of the neutral zone. But the victory had come at a heavy cost. Many Koth warriors lay dead, their bodies scattered across the rocky ground. Several members of Sean's team had also fallen, their sacrifices forever etched into his memory. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Sean and the Koth chieftain stood side by side, their armor battered and their faces grim. "So you fought well, human," the chieftain said, his voice filled with grudging respect. "You and your team have proven yourselves true allies of the Koth." Sean nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of the lives lost. "And you have proven yourselves true friends," he said. "From this day forward, let there be an unbreakable bond between our peoples. Let us work together to build a better future for all." The chieftain clasped Sean's arm, his grip strong and unyielding. "So be it," he said, his eyes glinting with a fierce determination. With a steady supply of Ethereum secured and a powerful new ally at their side, Sean and his team returned to the Breen homeworld, ready to continue the vital work of terraforming. But even as they celebrated their hard-won victory, Sean couldn't shake the feeling that their actions in the neutral zone had set something far larger in motion. He had no way of knowing that, even as they spoke, a powerful crime syndicate was monitoring their every move, their shadowy leader watching from the depths of space with cold, calculating eyes. The syndicate had been the true power behind the pirate gang, using them as pawns in a much larger game. And now, with the Koth and the Galactic Council united against them, they saw their carefully laid plans beginning to unravel. In a darkened chamber, filled with the glow of holographic displays and the hum of advanced machinery, the syndicate leader sat, his face hidden in shadow. "The human and his team have become a problem," he said, his voice a cold metallic rasp. "They threaten everything we have worked for." His subordinates, a motley crew of aliens from a dozen different species, shifted uneasily, their eyes filled with fear. "What are your orders, sir?" one of them asked, his voice trembling. The syndicate leader leaned forward, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Eliminate them," he said, his voice filled with a chilling finality. "Eliminate them all." And so, even as Sean and his team celebrated their victory and looked forward to a brighter future, a new threat was gathering on the horizon, a threat that would test them as never before. As the terraforming rigs hummed and whirred across the Breen homeworld surface, the once desolate landscape slowly transformed into a tapestry of green and blue. Rivers flowed where dust storms once raged, and young saplings stretched towards the nurturing sunlight. Sean watched the progress with a sense of pride, knowing that his team's efforts were giving the Breen a chance at a new beginning. But even as new life bloomed, a sinister threat emerged. Breen began to fall ill, their exoskeletons turning a sickly grey as they lay racked with fever and weakness. The disease spread like wildfire through the population, leaving fear and desperation in its wake. Zara, her eyes bleary from long hours hunched over microscopes and computer screens, called Sean to her makeshift laboratory. "It's a virus," she said, her voice tight with concern. "One that's perfectly adapted to Breen physiology. This is no natural illness, Sean. I think it's been engineered." Sean's jaw tightened. "The Syndicate. They're trying to destabilize the peace we've built." He immediately contacted the Galactic Council, his message laced with urgency. The Council, grasping the severity of the situation, dispatched a team of their finest medical researchers to aid Zara in her race to find a cure. But Sean knew that a cure alone wouldn't be enough. They needed to strike at the heart of the Syndicate, to cut off the threat at its source. He and Niran pored over intelligence reports and intercepted communications, piecing together a picture of the Syndicate's biological weapons program. "They're planning to unleash this virus on other worlds," Niran said, his usually stoic demeanor cracking with anger. "They want to sow chaos and reap the profits." Sean's fists clenched. "Not if we have anything to say about it." They gathered a strike force of Ilarian Breen soldiers, the best of the best. Armed and determined, they boarded a stealth ship and set course for the Syndicate's hidden research base, deep in the lawless reaches of space. As they approached the facility, alarms blared and defense turrets swiveled to face them. The Syndicate had been expecting them. Sean gritted his teeth as the ship shuddered under a barrage of laser fire. The strike force blasted their way into the facility, plasma rifles blazing. They were met with a hail of return fire as Syndicate mercenaries poured into the corridors, their cybernetically enhanced bodies bristling with illegal weapons. Sean and Niran fought side by side, their movements fluid and precise. They cut a path through the enemy ranks, the air thick with the stench of burned flesh and ozone. They breached the heart of the complex, a vast laboratory filled with bubbling vats and humming machinery. In the center stood the lead scientist, a gaunt, pale-skinned creature with cold, calculating eyes. "You're too late," it hissed, its spindly fingers dancing across a control panel. "The virus has already been perfected. You cannot stop what is to come. Sean lunged forward, his fist connecting with the scientist's jaw with a satisfying crunch. As the creature crumpled, Sean turned to the computer banks, his eyes scanning the data scrolling across the screens. What he saw turned his stomach. The Syndicate hadn't just been developing biological weapons. They had been experimenting with cybernetic enhancements, fusing flesh and machine in a twisted pursuit of power. With a snarl, Sean slammed his fist into the control panel, sparks flying. "Niran, grab the scientist. We're shutting this place down." As they fought their way back to the ship, the facility collapsing around them, Sean's communicator crackled to life. It was Zara, her voice filled with exhausted triumph. "Sean, we did it. We found a cure." Relief flooded through Sean as he strapped himself into his seat, the ship rocketing away from the exploding base. They had struck a blow against the Syndicate and secured a lifeline for the Breen. But even as they celebrated, a new message came through, this one from the Galactic Council. Sean's blood ran cold as he read the words. A massive unknown fleet had entered the galaxy, and they were heading straight for the Breen homeworld. The Council feared the worst, that this new threat was connected to the Syndicate, and that all they had fought for was about to be put to the ultimate test. As the unknown armada bore down on the Breen planet, Sean barked orders to his team. "Ixes, take your squadron and buy us some time. Zara, Niran, see if you can hack their systems." Ixis snapped a salute and sprinted for her fighter, her wings buzzing. Within moments, she and her wing were screaming towards the approaching fleet, plasma cannons blazing. Sean watched the dogfight unfold on the tactical display, his jaw clenched. Even with the Galactic Council reinforcements, they were hopelessly outgunned. Suddenly his comm crackled to life. A face appeared on the screen, a human face, but one twisted by cybernetic implants. "Sean Taggart," the figure said, his voice a metallic rasp. "I am Krax, commander of this fleet. I have no wish to destroy you, but I will if I must. The Ethereum mines on the Koth planet. Surrender them to me, and I will spare the Breen." Sean's mind raced. The Ethereum was vital to the terraforming project. Without it, the Breen were doomed. But if he gave in to Krax's demands, who knew what the cyborg would do with that much power? "I need time to consider your offer," Sean said, stalling for time. Krax's face hardened. "You have 1 hour. After that, I start shooting." As the screen went dark, Sean turned to Zara and Niran. "Tell me you've got something." Zara nodded, her fingers flying over her console. "Their ships are heavily automated, controlled by a central AI. If we can introduce a virus into their system, it could cripple their fleet." "But we'd need to upload it directly to their command ship," Niran added. Sean's eyes glinted. "Then that's what we'll do. Grok, assemble a strike team. We're going in." Minutes later, Sean, Grok, and a hand-picked team of Breen and Ilari commandos were speeding towards Krax's flagship in a cloaked shuttle. They docked undetected and slipped aboard, moving silently through the ship's dark corridors. But as they neared the computer core, alarms began to blare. Krax's cyborg soldiers poured into the hallway, their weapons spitting plasma. Sean and his team fought back, their pulse rifles roaring. But for every cyborg they cut down, 2 more seemed to take its place. "Go!" Sean shouted to Grok. "Get to the core. Upload the virus." As Grok and the commandos fought their way forward, Sean turned to face the oncoming horde. And there at their head was Krax himself, his body a gleaming mass of metal and circuitry. "You should have taken my offer," Krax snarled, his fists clenching. They clashed in a furious melee, Sean's human reflexes pitted against Krax's cybernetic strength. They traded blows across the hallway, sparks flying as metal struck metal. In the computer core, Grok and the commandos battled their way to the central terminal. Grok slammed the data chip into the port, his fingers dancing across the keys. "Virus uploaded," he roared. "Let's get out of here." Across the ship, screens flickered and died as the virus took hold. In the hallway, Krax staggered, his cybernetic implants shorting out. Sean pressed his advantage, driving the cyborg back with a flurry of blows. And then with a final desperate lunge, Sean struck, his rifle butt crashing into Krax's skull. The cyborg crumpled, his eyes going dark. "Sean," Grok's voice crackled over the comm. "The fleet is disabled. The council ships are moving in." Sean allowed himself a grim smile. They had done it. Against all odds, they had saved the Breen. Hours later, as the smoke of battle cleared, Sean stood before the Galactic Council, his team at his side. The councillors' faces were grave, but their eyes shone with respect. "Sean Taggart," the head councillor said, her voice ringing through the chamber. "You and your team have done the impossible. You have not only saved the Breen, but perhaps the entire galaxy." She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "The Council has a new mission for you. We want you to serve as our elite troubleshooting unit, to go where we cannot and do what must be done to maintain peace in the galaxy." Sean glanced at his team, seeing the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They had been through hell together, had forged bonds stronger than steel. With them at his side, he knew he could face anything. He turned back to the Council, his voice clear and strong. "We accept." As the Galactic Council's newly appointed troubleshooters, Sean and his team found themselves hurtling through hyperspace towards a remote research station, responding to a distress signal that had abruptly gone silent. The station had been investigating an energy anomaly, and now it was dark. Sean felt a knot of unease in his gut as their ship dropped out of hyperspace and the station came into view. It was a scene of carnage. The station's hull was pockmarked with blast marks, its airlocks shattered. As they docked and entered, the stench of death assaulted their nostrils. Bodies of the station's crew, torn and mangled, littered the corridors. Zara knelt beside one of the corpses, scanning it with her Omni-tool. "These wounds, I've never seen anything like them." Sean's grip tightened on his pulse rifle as a chilling scream echoed through the station's halls. It was unlike any sound he had heard before, a psychic assault that clawed at the edges of his mind. "Form up!" he barked, his team falling into a defensive formation as they advanced deeper into the station. They found the source of the anomaly in the central lab, a swirling vortex of energy that pulsed with an otherworldly light. And before it stood the aliens, tall and gaunt, their skin a sickly grey. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent psionic energy that Sean could feel probing at his thoughts. "Open fire!" he yelled, and the room erupted into a chaos of plasma bolts and psychic blasts. "Fall back!" he ordered, laying down covering fire as they retreated towards the hangar bay. But the aliens were relentless, their psychic attacks sapping the strength and will of Sean's team. Grok, the mighty Kraltak, stood his ground, his massive fists pulverizing any alien that came near. Sean hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to stand and fight. But he knew Grok was buying them time, a chance to escape and warn the galaxy of the threat. With a heavy heart, Sean led the survivors to the ship, blasting off even as Grok's war cry echoed through the comms, abruptly cut off. As they raced away from the station, Sean studied the data they had managed to collect, a cold realization dawning. The anomaly wasn't just an energy source, it was a gateway, a doorway to another dimension, and the aliens pouring through it were just the vanguard of an invasion force. The Galactic Council needed to know, needed to prepare, but as Sean stood before the assembled councillors, their holograms flickering, he saw doubt and hesitation in their eyes. The scars of the recent conflicts were still raw, and many were reluctant to commit to another war. "The threat is real," Sean insisted, his voice raw with emotion. "We need to act now before it's too late." But the council was divided, mired in politics and old grudges. Even some of the Breen and Ilari, his staunchest allies, were hesitant. They had only just found peace, and the thought of another war was too much to bear. Frustrated and angry, Sean stormed out of the council chamber. If they wouldn't act, he would. He called in every favor, reached out to every contact. The Koth, the rebel Breen, the Ilari resistance, they answered his call, rallying to his side. It was a ragtag fleet, a mishmash of ships and species, but it was united in purpose. They would meet the alien threat head-on, buying time for the galaxy to prepare. The battle was fought on the edge of the dimensional rift, the fabric of space-time twisting and warping around them. Sean led the charge, his ship plunging into the heart of the alien armada. Plasma fire and psychic blasts crisscrossed the void, ships exploding in silent fireballs. Beside him, Neran and Ixis fought with a fierce determination, their skills honed by countless battles, but the aliens were too many, their technology too advanced. One by one, Sean's friends and comrades fell, their sacrifices buying precious seconds. In a final, desperate gambit, Sean and his remaining team made a suicide run on the rift, detonating a payload of exotic matter. The explosion was blinding, a shockwave that rippled across the stars. The rift collapsed, the gateway sealed, and the alien invasion was halted. But the cost was high. Neran, Ixis, so many others gone, their lives given in defense of the galaxy. As Sean limped his battered ship back to Council space, he felt a hollow victory. The Council, chastened by the near catastrophe, finally began to listen. They worked closely with Sean and his remaining team, Zara and a few others, shoring up defenses and preparing for the future. Sean threw himself into the work, trying to bury his grief in duty, but as he stood on the observation deck staring out into the endless expanse of the galaxy, he knew his journey was far from over. New threats loomed on the horizon, new dangers waiting to be faced, but Sean would meet them head-on as he always had, for his fallen friends, for the galaxy he had sworn to protect. The story ended, but Sean's mission continued. With his team by his side, he set forth once more, ready to face whatever challenges the cosmos had in store. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.